Dr. Kim Suho rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of cold coffee. The Antarctic Research Station hummed quietly around him as he stared at the impossible data scrolling across his holographic display. 3 months of drilling through ancient ice had led to this moment, and he still couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Minji, you need to see this right now," he called out, his voice echoing through the sterile laboratory. Dr. Park Minji looked up from her quantum analyzer, her black hair falling across her face as she hurried over to his workstation. "What? Is it this time, Suho? Another false reading from the ice samples?" she asked, but her casual tone changed when she saw his expression. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking slightly as he pointed at the holographic data streams floating in the air between them. "Look at layer 847, the ice from exactly 500,000 years ago. There's something embedded in the molecular structure itself," Suho whispered, as if speaking too loudly might make the discovery disappear. Minji's fingers moved quickly across the control interface, her expertise with quantum archaeology evident in every gesture. The ancient data began to decode, revealing patterns that made both scientists step back in shock. What they were seeing shouldn't exist, couldn't exist. "These are quantum encryption signatures," Minji said, her voice barely audible. "But the mathematical complexity is beyond anything we've ever developed. This is at least 1,000 years ahead of our current technology." The data continued to unfold, revealing layer after layer of information that had been perfectly preserved in Earth's ice for 500,000 years. Suho activated the translation protocols, and slowly, impossibly, the ancient messages began to form coherent patterns. "By the stars," Minji gasped as the first complete data packet decoded. "Suho, these aren't just random signals. These are historical records, engineering blueprints, star charts showing locations we've never seen before." The revelation hit them like a physical blow. The data described an advanced human civilization that had existed on Earth long before recorded history. They called themselves the progenitors, and their technology made humanity's current achievements look like stone tools compared to plasma cannons. "Look at these spacecraft designs," Suho said, manipulating the holographic display to show massive ship blueprints. "These generation ships are the size of entire cities, faster than light drives, matter converters, artificial gravity systems that we're still trying to figure out." But as they dug deeper into the records, a darker picture emerged. The progenitors hadn't left Earth by choice. Something had terrified them enough to abandon their homeworld entirely, taking their advanced technology and leaving behind only the primitive humans who couldn't make the journey. "There are references here to something called the Great Departure," Minji said, her fingers trembling as she accessed more files. "It mentions a catastrophic event that threatened all life on Earth. The progenitors had to choose between staying to fight an impossible enemy or preserving their species among the stars. The ice core data painted a picture of desperate evacuation. Massive ships launching from hidden bases around the globe, carrying millions of advanced humans into the void of space. But not everyone could go. The record spoke of genetic compatibility requirements and technological adaptation protocols that excluded most of Earth's human population. "They left us behind," Suho realized, his voice filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. "Our ancestors weren't good enough for their perfect society, so they abandoned us to whatever was coming." More data streams revealed the truth about early human history. Every myth about gods descending from the sky, every legend of advanced beings teaching primitive humans, every story of lost civilizations had been based on fragmented memories of the progenitors. "But look at this final message," Minji said, highlighting a section of the data that made both scientists freeze. "It's addressed to whoever would eventually decode these records. They knew someday their primitive cousins might develop enough to find this information." The message was simple but chilling. "To those who remain on the cradle world, we leave this record so you will understand. We did not abandon you by choice, but by necessity. The enemy we fled still sleeps in the dark, between stars. Should it wake, should it return to claim what was taken, remember that evolution is survival's greatest weapon. What we preserved in perfection, you must earn through struggle. Perhaps that struggle will make you stronger than we ever were. Suho and Minji stared at each other in the fluorescent light of the laboratory. Everything humanity believed about, its origins, its place in the universe, its destiny among the stars, had just been shattered and rebuilt in the span of a few hours. "We have to tell the Global Science Council immediately," Minji said, but her voice carried a note of fear. "This changes everything. If the progenitors are still out there, if this enemy they mentioned still exists, then humanity needs to be ready," Suho finished, already reaching for his communication device. The discovery would shake the foundations of human civilization, but it might also be the key to their survival. The ancient ice had kept its secrets for 500,000 years. Now those secrets were humanity's inheritance, for better or worse. Admiral Lee Jinho gripped the armrest of his command chair as the space around Earth's outer defensive perimeter began to shimmer and distort. The massive hyperspace gates that humanity had built for peaceful exploration suddenly registered energy signatures that made every sensor on the bridge scream warnings. "Contact in 30 seconds, announced Lieutenant Park Soyoung from her navigation console. "Sir, these readings are impossible. The mass displacement alone should have torn holes in space-time. Then they appeared, ships so massive that they blocked out entire star fields, their hulls gleaming with a strange metallic substance that seemed to bend light around itself. The smallest vessel was larger than humanity's biggest space stations, while the flagship dwarfed entire moons. Their design was hauntingly familiar yet completely alien, as if someone had taken human engineering and evolved it through millennia of impossible advancement. "My God," whispered Chief Engineer Ko Min-hyuk from his station. "Those aren't just ships, they're floating cities. Look at the energy signatures coming from their cores. Each one has enough power to light up an entire solar system." Commander Han Yuna's fingers flew across her communication console as dozens of transmission channels suddenly activated. "Admiral, they're broadcasting on every frequency we've ever used, plus hundreds we didn't even know existed. The signal strength is overwhelming our entire communications grid." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a figure that made every human on the bridge take a sharp breath. The being looked human, but perfected in ways that felt unnatural. Their features were symmetrical to an uncomfortable degree. Their eyes held an intelligence that seemed ancient beyond measure, and their technology was seamlessly integrated into their very body. "Inhabitants of the cradle world," the figure spoke, their voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull itself. "I am Fleet Commander Vayek of the Progenitor Hegemony. We have returned to reclaim what has always been ours by right of origin." Admiral Jinho activated his response channel, keeping his voice steady despite the fear rising in his chest. "This is Admiral Lee Jinho of the Earth Space Service. You're entering sovereign human territory. State your intentions." The progenitor's expression didn't change, but something like amusement flickered in their ancient eyes. "Sovereign. You speak of sovereignty over worlds that belong to our civilization when your ancestors were barely capable of making fire. We expected to find primitive tribes scratching in the dirt. Instead, we discover that our abandoned cousins have developed crude spaceflight." Tactical Officer No Jae-hwan's console erupted with new readings. "Sir, I'm detecting over 200 vessels in their fleet. Their weapons systems are beyond our understanding. Each ship is equipped with technology that makes our plasma cannons look like slingshots." Commander Yuna leaned closer to her station, her face pale as she decoded more of the alien transmissions. "Admiral, they're not just talking to us. They're communicating with something else. There are signals going out to coordinates throughout human space. They already know the locations of every human colony, every space station, every outpost we've built in the last 1,000 years." "How is that possible?" Jinho demanded, but even as he asked, he suspected the answer. The ancient records from Antarctica had mentioned monitoring systems, ways for the progenitors to keep track of their abandoned homeworld. Fleet Commander Vake's image dominated the view screen as he continued his ultimatum. "Your species has had 500,000 years to develop, and this is the best you could achieve? Primitive fusion drives, basic energy weapons, colonies that barely qualify as frontier settlements. We are disappointed, but not surprised. With respect, Commander, Jinho replied, his military training keeping his anger in check. Humanity has built a civilization spanning 47 star systems. We've achieved interstellar travel, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and technologies your ancestors never imagined. The progenitor actually laughed, a sound that somehow conveyed both amusement and contempt. Technologies we never imagined. Child, we were manipulating quantum fields before your sun finished forming. We were traveling between galaxies while your species was learning to make stone tools. What you call advancement, we consider the fumbling attempts of infants. Suddenly, every human ship in the outer defense grid began receiving priority alerts. Captain Yu Jinsuk's voice crackled. Over the emergency channel from the ESS Guardian. Admiral, they're powering weapons systems. Energy readings are off the charts. Whatever they're planning to do, it's going to be devastating. Stand down your vessels immediately, Fleet Commander Vec commanded, his voice now carrying an edge of impatience. You have 10 minutes to order the complete surrender of all human military forces and the evacuation of Earth's population to designated processing centers. Failure to comply will result in immediate extermination. Admiral Jinho looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These weren't just soldiers. They were representatives of everything humanity had become through centuries of exploration, discovery, and growth. Lieutenant Park So-young was the daughter of Mars colonists. Chief Engineer Ko Min-hyuk had designed the quantum drives that carried human ships to distant stars. Commander Han Yuna had spent her childhood on generation ships traveling between worlds. Negative, Fleet Commander, Jinho replied, his voice carrying the authority of 500,000 years of human evolution. Humanity doesn't surrender our home to anyone, regardless of their claims or technology. The response was immediate and terrifying. Beams of pure energy lanced out from the progenitor fleet, striking human defensive platforms and turning them into expanding clouds of superheated gas. The weapons didn't just destroy their targets, they unmade them at the molecular level, erasing entire space stations as if they had never existed. But even as the attacks began, something else was happening. Throughout human space, every colony, every outpost, every ship was receiving the same message that Earth's defenders were transmitting. The progenitors had returned, but humanity would not bow down to their forgotten ancestors. The war for humanity's future had begun. Captain. Song Ki-woo watched in horror from the bridge of the ESS Resilience as the Seventh Fleet disappeared in a blaze of crimson energy. The progenitor dreadnought responsible for the destruction hadn't even slowed down, its weapons cutting through human ships like a heated blade through ice. In 3 weeks of warfare, humanity had lost over 60% of its military vessels without managing to destroy a single enemy ship. Sir, the Triumph and Victory are reporting total system failures, Communications Officer Lee Soo-jin announced, her voice cracking with stress. Their hulls are intact, but whatever those energy beams do, they're shutting down every piece of technology they touch. Chief Engineer Choi So-min looked up from her tactical display, sweat beading on her forehead despite the bridge's cool temperature. Captain, I've been analyzing the attack patterns for the past week. Their weapons don't just destroy our ships, they're designed to disable our technology first. It's like they want to capture us alive. Small comfort, muttered Weapons Officer Yoon Dae-sung as he watched another human destroyer drift helplessly through space, its crew trapped inside a powerless hull. At this rate, we'll be extinct in a month. But So-min wasn't ready to give up. She had spent her entire career solving impossible engineering problems, from fixing fusion reactors with spare parts to jury-rigging quantum drives from mining equipment. Her mind was already working on something the progenitors hadn't expected, human creativity born from desperation. Captain, what if we're approaching this all wrong? She said suddenly, causing everyone on the bridge to turn toward her. We're trying to fight their advanced technology with our advanced technology, but what made us survivors for 500,000 years wasn't our best equipment. It was our ability to improvise. Kai-woo raised an eyebrow. What are you suggesting? Chief, I'm suggesting we stop trying to out-tech them and start out-thinking them, So-min replied, pulling up holographic displays of the nearby Kepler station. Look at this mining facility. It's got massive industrial equipment designed to crack asteroids, electromagnetic launchers for moving ore, and quantum tunneling devices for deep extraction. None of it was designed as weapons, but in the right hands, anything can be a weapon. Kiwu finished, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. You want to turn a mining station into a battleship? Not just any battleship, Somin grinned, her fingers dancing across the engineering controls. I want to turn it into something so unexpected, so improvised, so completely human that their perfect tactical computers won't know how to respond. Within hours, Captain Kiwu's small fleet was docked at Kepler Station, and the most unusual military conversion in human history began. Asteroid-cracking charges were rewired into proximity. Mines or transport tubes became missile launchers. The massive electromagnetic accelerators used for launching cargo containers were recalibrated to fire modified shipping pods filled with every piece of scrap metal, broken machinery, and industrial waste they could find. This is insane, laughed pilot Kang Hyunwoo as he watched engineers weld mining lasers onto the sides of cargo haulers. We're going to fight the most advanced fleet in the galaxy using garbage trucks and construction equipment. Sometimes insane is exactly what you need, replied Lieutenant Nam Hyeri from her newly installed hacking station. She had spent the last 2 days studying every piece of progenitor technology they had encountered, looking for patterns and weaknesses. Their ships are marvels of engineering, but they're also completely standardized. Every vessel follows the same design principles, uses the same tactical protocols, responds to threats in the same predictable ways. And that's their weakness, asked Navigator Oceanho. That's their weakness, Hyeri confirmed. They've had 500,000 years to perfect their technology, but perfection makes you rigid. They can't adapt to something they've never seen before. The trap was set 3 days later, when a progenitor dreadnought arrived at Kepler Station to investigate the unusual energy signatures. The massive alien vessel approached cautiously, its sensors scanning for threats, but finding only what appeared to be a damaged mining facility and a handful of primitive human cargo ships. Initiate Operation Scrapyard, Captain Kiwu commanded. What happened next defied every tactical manual ever written. The damaged mining station suddenly erupted with weapons fire, but not the energy beams or missile barrages the progenitors expected. Instead, thousands of pieces of metal debris launched from electromagnetic accelerators created a storm of projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. The progenitor shields, designed to deflect coherent energy attacks, proved useless against simple kinetic impacts from random chunks of scrap metal. Warning alarms screamed throughout the alien vessel as its perfect hull was peppered with holes from flying wrenches, pipe segments, and broken machinery. Now, shouted Somin, and the modified cargo haulers struck like a pack of wolves. Using their industrial-grade cutting torches and mining equipment, they began literally chewing through the dreadnought's hull. The progenitor crew, trained for elegant space combat, had no idea how to respond to enemies who were essentially using power tools as weapons. Lieutenant Hyeri's hacking programs, designed to interface with human mining computers, somehow found compatibility with the alien systems. I'm in their network, she announced. Their computer security is incredible against sophisticated attacks, but it has no defense against a program that thinks it's trying to calibrate ore processing equipment. Within minutes, the massive progenitor dreadnought was drifting helplessly through space, its crew trapped inside by their own security systems that had been convinced they were contaminated mining samples requiring quarantine. Impossible, Captain Kiwu whispered as boarding teams from the cargo haulers entered the alien ship through holes cut by industrial plasma torches. We actually did it. We captured a progenitor dreadnought using mining equipment and garbage. But the real discovery came when Lieutenant Hyeri began downloading the ship's databases. The progenitors weren't just technologically advanced, they were technologically dependent. Their entire civilization was built on systems so perfect and automated that they had forgotten how to improvise, how to adapt, how to survive when things didn't go according to plan. They've spent 500,000 years in the sterile environment of their generation ships, Hyeri reported. Everything is controlled, everything is predictable. They've never had to deal with broken equipment, resource shortages, or systems that don't work properly. Meanwhile, we've spent 500,000 years making broken things work, Somin added with a grin. Every human engineer, every mechanic, every technician has spent their entire career fixing things that shouldn't work with parts that don't fit. The Battle of Kepler Station became the turning point of the war, not because humanity had better weapons, but because they had something the progenitors had lost, the ability to make something out of nothing, to turn disaster into opportunity, to fight with whatever tools were available. The hunters had become the hunted, and the progenitors were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who refuses to fight fair. Admiral Juan Tejo stood in the command center deep beneath Luna City, surrounded by holographic displays that painted a grim but changing picture of the war. Red zones marked the 43 human colonies that had been destroyed or captured by progenitor forces, but for the first time in months, new blue markers were appearing across the tactical map. Sir, incoming priority transmission from the Outer Rim sectors, announced Commander Yu Sora, her fingers dancing across the quantum communication array. The static-filled message that came through made everyone in the command center stop what they were doing. Command, this is General Park Seonwoo reporting from the Arcturus system. Mission accomplished. 3 progenitor heavy cruisers have been eliminated using Project Sunfire. I repeat, we have successfully weaponized stellar radiation against enemy vessels. A cheer went up from the junior officers, but Admiral Taiho remained focused on the tactical implications. Commander Yu, get me a direct link to General Park. I want a full breakdown of how they managed to destroy progenitor ships. Within minutes, General Park's weathered face appeared on the main communication screen, his uniform scorched, and his expression weary but triumphant. Admiral, it worked better than we hoped. We used modified solar collectors to focus and redirect radiation from the local star directly into the progenitor fleet formation. How did you manage to target them accurately? Asked Chief Tactical Officer Kim Youngmin. Their ships move faster than anything we've built. That's the beautiful part. Park replied with a grin. We didn't target them directly. We turned the entire star into a weapon. By creating artificial solar flares using gravitational resonance bombs, we made the star itself attack them. Their shields are designed to deflect artificial energy weapons, but they can't defend against the raw power of a burning sun. The success at Arcturus was just the beginning. Across human space, desperate commanders were discovering that 500,000 years of survival had given humanity something their ancient cousins had lost, the ability to turn anything into a weapon. Captain Oh Junho's engineering corps had made an even more remarkable discovery while analyzing captured progenitor technology. Admiral, you need to see this, he said, connecting to the command center from his research facility on Europa. We've found their weakness, and it's not what we expected. The holographic display shifted to show detailed scans of progenitor, neural implants, the sophisticated devices that connected their minds directly to their technology. Every progenitor has these implants surgically installed at birth, Junho explained. They use them to interface with their ships, their weapons, their entire civilization. That sounds like an advantage, not a weakness, observed Commander. So it would be, except for one thing, Captain Junho continued, highlighting specific frequency patterns in the neural implant data. The implants operate on very specific quantum frequencies, and we've discovered that certain combinations of electromagnetic radiation can disrupt those frequencies completely. Dr. Lim Daeun joined the briefing from her laboratory ship in the asteroid belt, her excitement evident even through the communication lag. Captain Junho is being modest. We haven't just found a way to disrupt their implants. We've found a way to turn their own technology against them. By broadcasting modified communication signals on the right frequencies, we can cause their neural implants to malfunction. What kind of malfunction? Admiral Taiho asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Complete system shutdown, Dr. Lim replied grimly. The progenitors have become so dependent on their implants that they can't function without them. They can't pilot their ships, operate their weapons, or even perform basic tasks. In essence, we can disable entire crews without firing a single conventional weapon. The implications were staggering. Within days, Human ships were being equipped with what the crews called confusion cannons, modified communication arrays that could broadcast the disruptive frequencies across entire star systems. The first field test came during the battle of New Geneva, where Commander Cha In-woo's destroyer squadron faced off against a progenitor battle group. "All ships prepare to broadcast on frequency designation Tango 7, Commander Cha ordered as the enemy vessels approached. The progenitor ships moved with their usual perfect precision, their formations flawless, and their approach calculated to the second. Then the human ships activated their new weapons. The effect was immediate and devastating. The perfect progenitor. Formations suddenly scattered as ships began drifting in random directions. Emergency signals flooded the communication channels as progenitor crews struggled to regain control of their vessels. Their perfect technology had become a prison, trapping them inside ships they could no longer operate. "Target the lead dreadnought," Cha commanded. "Standard kinetic rounds. Let's see how their perfect shields handle good old-fashioned bullets when they can't operate their defensive systems." The battle was over in minutes. Without their technological advantages, the progenitor ships were sitting targets. Human forces that had been retreating for months suddenly found themselves winning battles against enemies who had seemed invincible. But the real revelation came when Dr. Lim's research teams began interrogating captured progenitor crews. Lieutenant Colonel Zhong Min-seo led the first interview sessions, and what he discovered changed humanity's understanding of their ancient enemies completely. "They're not evil," he reported to Admiral Tai-ho after a week of interviews. "They're just frozen. They've spent 500,000 years in a perfectly controlled environment where everything works exactly as designed. They've never had to adapt, never had to improvise, never had to solve problems that didn't have predetermined solutions." The captured progenitor commander, a being who called himself Vac Prime, confirmed humanity's suspicions during his interrogation. "Your species should not be capable of this," he said, his voice carrying a mixture of confusion and something that might have been respect. "Our tactical computers analyzed every possible human response to our invasion. None of the scenarios included the use of stellar radiation as a weapon or the weaponization of communication frequencies." "That's because your computers think like you do," Colonel Zhong replied. "Perfectly, logically, predictably. Humans don't think that way. We think like survivors." The tide of war had indeed turned, but not because humanity had built better weapons or developed superior technology. It had turned because 500,000 years of struggle, adaptation, and survival had made humans into something their progenitor ancestors could never have imagined. A species that could turn any challenge into an opportunity, any weakness into a strength, any impossible situation into a chance for victory. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy was about to learn that evolution's greatest weapon wasn't perfection, but the ability to change. Fleet Admiral Shin Ji-hoon stood on the command deck of the massive orbital fortress surrounding Earth, watching as thousands of defense platforms came online simultaneously. The sight was breathtaking and terrifying, humanity's last desperate gamble unfolding in the space above their homeworld. Every technological breakthrough, every scientific discovery, every innovation born from 500 millennia of survival was about to be unleashed in one final battle. "Admiral, all sectors report ready for Operation Prometheus," announced his aide, Captain Lee Yunji, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. "Every human colony, every research station, every ship in the fleet is contributing to this effort." Through the massive viewport, Ji-hoon could see the progenitor armada approaching Earth like a plague of metallic locusts. Over 3,000 ships, each one capable of destroying entire star systems, had gathered for what their commanders believed would be the final extermination of rebellious humanity. Their flagship alone was larger than Earth's moon, its hull gleaming with weapons that could crack planets in half. "Sir, incoming transmission from Progenitor Fleet Commander Vec Prime," reported Communications Officer Nam Seoyeon. "He's demanding our unconditional surrender within 1 hour, or they'll begin systematic planetary bombardment." Ji-hoon activated his response channel, his voice carrying across not just to the enemy fleet, but to every human settlement in the galaxy. "Commander Vec Prime, "This is Fleet Admiral Shin Ji-hoon of the United Human Defense Force. Your terms are rejected. Earth stands, and humanity will never bow to those who abandoned us." The progenitor commander's laugh echoed through space, filled with the confidence of someone who had never experienced defeat. "Foolish children, you have delayed the inevitable long enough. Your primitive weapons cannot stop us. Your makeshift tactics cannot save you. We are returning to reclaim our birthright, and nothing you possess can prevent our victory." But as the progenitor fleet moved into attack formation, something unprecedented began happening throughout human space. Engineer Ko Young-ho, working from a hidden research station in the asteroid belt, activated the most ambitious project in human history, technology that shouldn't have been possible even by progenitor standards. "Prometheus Array is online," Ko announced, his voice crackling with excitement and fear. "Admiral, we're about to attempt something that violates every known law of physics. The localized reality manipulation drives are responding to our commands." What humanity had discovered in their desperate research was something their progenitor ancestors had never imagined: the ability to temporarily rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in small regions of space. It was technology born not from perfection, but from desperation, not from careful planning, but from the human refusal to accept that anything was impossible. The battle began with the progenitors deploying their most devastating weapons. Beams of energy that could shatter moons lanced out toward Earth's orbital defenses, while gravity bombs capable of turning gas giants into black holes streaked through space. For a moment, it seemed as if humanity's last stand would end in seconds. Then, the impossible happened. The moon-shattering energy beams struck invisible barriers and simply stopped existing. The gravity bombs reached their targets and transformed into harmless bursts of colored light. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around the human defense platforms, creating zones where the progenitors' perfect weapons simply refused to function. "What is this?" Vake Prime's voice carried a note of panic for the first time in the war. "Our weapons are non-functional. Our sensors are reporting spatial anomalies that cannot exist." Admiral Yu Sunhee's voice responded from the flagship of humanity's defense fleet, the ESS Evolution. "What you're seeing is 500,000 years of human ingenuity. While you preserved your technology in perfect stasis, we kept growing, kept learning, kept pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The human counterattack was unlike anything seen in galactic history. Ships that had been converted from mining vessels and cargo haulers unleashed weapons that defied classification. Some fired concentrated bursts of modified space-time that aged enemy hulls by millions of years in seconds. Others launched projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them impossible to intercept or shield against. Captain Bei Jinwoo led a squadron of modified human fighters in a daring assault on the progenitor flagship itself. His ships didn't rely on advanced technology or perfect engineering. Instead, they used controlled chaos, random attack patterns, and weapons cobbled together from whatever materials were available. "This is impossible," reported the progenitor tactical officer, as human fighters somehow passed through their shields using techniques that made no mathematical sense. "They're using equipment that shouldn't work, following tactics that violate all strategic principles and achieving results that our computers cannot predict or counter." The tide of battle turned when Dr. Choi Mi-young's research team activated their ultimate weapon, a device that could temporarily remove the progenitor's technological dependence by forcibly disconnecting their neural implants. Suddenly, crews that had relied on perfect technology for 500,000 years found themselves in the same position as their primitive ancestors, forced to think, adapt, and survive using only their minds and hands. "We surrender." The transmission came from dozens of progenitor ships simultaneously as their crews realized they were helpless without their technological crutches. "We cannot function without our systems. We cannot fight a war using only our minds." But instead of pressing their advantage, humanity did something that surprised even themselves. Admiral Shin Ji-hoon opened a channel to the entire progenitor fleet, his words carrying across space to reach every enemy vessel. "We don't want you dead," he said, simply. We want you to remember what you forgot during your long exile. You were human once. You had the ability to grow, to change, to become more than you were. That ability is still inside you. You just need to remember how to use it." Captain Bei Jinwoo's voice joined the transmission as his boarding teams entered the surrendered progenitor vessels. "We're offering you something your perfect civilization never could, the chance to evolve, to become imperfect, unpredictable, and alive again. The war ended not with destruction but with transformation. Progenitor crews, stripped of their technological dependence, began working alongside human engineers to repair their ships using improvised solutions and creative problem-solving. For the first time in 500,000 years, they experienced the satisfaction of fixing something that was broken, of making something work that shouldn't have worked, of growing beyond their limitations. Fleet Commander Vac Prime, his neural, implants permanently disabled, stood on the bridge of his flagship as human and progenitor crews worked together to restore basic life support systems using spare parts and ingenuity. "How did you know we could change?" he asked Captain Bei. "Because change is what makes us human," Bei replied with a smile. "And despite everything that's happened, despite the time that's passed, despite the technology that separates us, you're still human at heart. You just forgot how to be." The galaxy watched in amazement as the greatest war in recorded history ended not with the destruction of either side, but with the reunion of two branches of humanity that had been separated for 500,000 years. The progenitors had returned as conquerors, but they left as students, ready to learn once again the most important lesson in the universe, that the courage to change, to grow, and to become more than you were yesterday was the greatest strength any species could possess. The end.